Today, we're going to travel together through the life of Karl Malone, because every achievement, every defeat, and every victory hides a lesson. They call him the Mailman. For nearly 2 decades, Karl Malone delivered points like few in NBA history. But deep down, the most important deliveries of his life weren't baskets. They were choices. They were roots. Hidden away from the noise of fame, Malone built a refuge that looks like something out of an American tale. Hundreds of acres with riverfront, well-kept stables, cabins warmed by fireplaces, and a horizon where time moves slowly. A place that breathes silence, purpose, and heritage. And the question is inevitable: why would one of the greatest legends of the league, who could have spent his days under the bright lights of Los Angeles, Miami, or New York, trade it all for open skies, mud on his boots, and the smell of burning wood? Before we cross the gates and reveal what lies behind this rural paradise, hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Here, every week, we open the doors to stories where luxury and legacy meet, and we discover that the true power of a legend is not only in what he conquered, but in what he chose to preserve. Long before the world knew Karl Malone as the Mailman, there was only a boy from tiny Summerfield, Louisiana. The youngest of a large family, he grew up far from any idea of luxury or glamour. What shaped his days wasn't gleaming basketballs, but the real weight of country life. He chopped firewood to keep the flame burning, hauled hay to feed the animals, and went hunting, not for sport, but because the table needed food. Each task was a silent lesson in responsibility and resilience. Childhood also brought deep pains, the kind that words can't contain. When his father, distant, almost a ghost in his life, took his own life, Karl was just 14. But he didn't talk about it. He didn't seek comfort in speeches or lamentations. His way of dealing with loss was simple and harsh. Wake up earlier, work harder. It was as if the silence of tragedy found its answer in the sound of the axe striking wood. By the time he reached high school, Malone wasn't just strong, he was forged. While many saw him as just another country boy, life was already preparing him for something greater. On his small school basketball team, he didn't just play, he pulled his teammates forward, dragging them with grit and stubbornness. There was no refined technique, no scouts taking notes, only raw talent and the determination of someone who never learned to quit. And so, among sawdust, pine trees, and silence, Karl Malone began writing the first page of his legend. A page not born from applause, but from sweat and resilience. If in small Summerfield Karl Malone learned resilience, it was in college basketball that he discovered how to turn that strength into a path. The country boy didn't attract big colleges at first. His low grades and forgotten hometown didn't draw much attention. Arkansas showed some interest, but Karl chose to stay close to home, enrolling at Louisiana Tech. Even then, his first season was cut short. He was academically ineligible. Once again, the world seemed to say he wasn't ready, but Karl Malone never needed permission to rise. When he finally put on the Bulldogs jersey, he turned frustration into fuel. By his second season, he was already dominant. 18 points, 9 rebounds per game, dragging the team to its first NCAA tournament appearance and even to the Sweet 16. That wasn't just performance, it was a statement. The boy who once chopped firewood was now making entire defenses bend before his strength. When he decided to leave college, he was already considered one of the top prospects. In 1985, his name echoed at the NBA draft. The Utah Jazz selected him 13th overall. The media barely noticed, as if it were just another pick. But those who knew Karl understood. Underestimating this man would be a mistake. By his second season, he was already the team's leading scorer. Night after night, he delivered points with the same discipline that once woke him before dawn to work the fields. Hard elbows, brute strength, and a stare that could break granite. Slowly, the league discovered that the Mailman never missed a delivery. By the late 80s, the nickname had stuck, the Mailman, and it was no accident. Karl Malone delivered every single night. Strength, consistency, and discipline made him the most reliable player in the NBA. While others chased the spotlight, he thrived in the quiet grind, marked by a consistency nearly impossible to match. Playing alongside John Stockton, he formed one of the most legendary duos basketball has ever seen. Stockton passed with the precision of a Swiss watch, and Malone finished with the unstoppable force of a bulldozer. It was the perfect pick and roll, a move so simple and lethal it became the Utah Jazz's signature. The stats didn't lie. Point after point, rebound after rebound, Malone climbed the all-time rankings, leaving defenders exhausted and arenas stunned. He became an all-star, an Olympic gold medalist, an NBA MVP. The respect came not only from his strength, but from his work ethic. He never missed games, never skipped practice. If the team needed him, Karl was there. But basketball also takes its toll. Malone led the Jazz to 2 NBA Finals in the 90s, and both times he ran into the same obstacle, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. They were epic battles, fit for movies, but the Jazz ended up as supporting actors. For many, the absence of a championship ring would forever mark his career. For Karl, though, every loss was a lesson, every frustration fuel. Because more than trophies, he believed in legacy, and his was already written, be the man who never failed to deliver. By the early 2000s, time, the one opponent no athlete beats, began to weigh. Malone was still dominant, but the aches and scars of battle couldn't be ignored. After nearly 2 decades carrying the Utah Jazz, in 2003, he chased one last chance at the elusive title. He joined the Los Angeles Lakers, forming a super team with Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and Gary Payton. For many, it was the dream team. For Karl, it was the last card. They reached the finals, but destiny was cruel. Glory slipped away once again. The trophy never came, but respect remained unshaken. At 40 years old, he was still delivering, proof of a career built on sweat, discipline, and consistency. And then, quietly, he stepped away from the game. No scandals, no grand farewell. He simply closed the cycle and returned to where it all began, the land. While other former players chased TV deals or lucrative endorsements, Malone went back to Louisiana. There, he built a ranch of over 400 acres, surrounded by trees, horses, and silence. It was as if the boy from Summerfield had finally found peace. The same land that once taught him to work hard was now his refuge. Among stables, fields, and the gentle sound of the river, Karl rediscovered who he had always been, a countryman, made of strong roots and simple values. Because for him, legacy wasn't measured only in points or awards. It was in the soil he cultivated, the family he raised, the dirt on his hands after a day's work. The Mailman had stopped delivering in the NBA, but his greatest delivery was only beginning. Far from packed arenas, Karl Malone found a new stage, the world of business. But unlike many who chased glamour or risky ventures, he chose the path of discipline, the same path that had guided him through every pre-dawn workout. While other ex-players spent fortunes on flashy cars or doomed projects, Malone invested in something more solid: land, properties in strategic spots, commercial real estate, places few valued that, in time, became gold mines, and all of it done in his own way. No debts, no banks. Faithful to the principles he learned as a boy, he preferred to build with what he had, step by step, like a man raising a fence on his ranch. That care gave birth to an empire. Restaurants, car dealerships, franchises that employed hundreds of people and boosted entire communities. For Karl, wealth was never just about numbers. It was about creating work, dignity, and future. And at the heart of that empire was always the ranch, an extension of his soul, with horses, stables, a cabin that smelled of wood and silence. It was there that he recharged his strength, far from the cameras, between fishing trips, coffee on the porch, and the sound of family gathered together. If in the NBA he became known as the Mailman for always delivering points, outside of it he delivered something greater: stability and purpose. He turned sweat into bricks, discipline into business, glory into roots. Because in the end, Karl Malone was never just a player. He was a farmer of dreams, a builder of legacies, and a guardian of a life that continues to inspire. Quiet, but steady as the land that shaped him. When the cold sets in and the silence of solitude calls, Karl Malone leaves behind the warmth of Louisiana and heads north. His destination, Alaska. Not to seek adventure or attention, but to find peace. On the outside, his home in the snow looks simple, even discreet. But once you step inside, you see the precision in every detail. Your feet touch the cool elegance of limestone, while a wide, glass-lined hallway seems to invite the mountain inside. At the heart of the living room, an emerald stone fireplace rises like a raw jewel, not just to warm the body, but to anchor the soul. The kitchen feels like a futuristic lab. A glowing, translucent island floats at the center, while minimalist cabinets hide secrets of European design. Premium appliances blend seamlessly into the architecture. Nothing screams for attention. Everything whispers sophisticated function. In the master suite, there's a nook by the window designed for watching snow fall slowly, like a private performance. The bathrooms feel like alpine resorts, heated floors, luxurious finishes, lines that balance modernity and comfort. Even the garage is a silent statement: spotless porcelain tile, LED lighting, a space treated like sculpture. Outside, a wraparound deck frames the house, offering the perfect view of the Arctic twilight. On lucky nights, the green and violet curtains of the northern lights paint the sky, a reminder that even giants need places where silence is the ultimate answer. Nothing there screams luxury. Everything whispers essence. This is Karl Malone's North, not just geographic, but spiritual. It's where the soul breathes. But what about the garage? The garage that says who he really is? Cars can be vanity, they can be showpieces. But in Karl Malone's case, they're mirrors. They reflect who he became and what he learned about himself. At the center of the collection sits a Dodge Challenger SRT Hellcat, a beast with over 700 horsepower, roaring so loud the town knows when the mailman is on the road. He didn't buy it to impress, but because it embodies the raw power that always followed him. Beside it, the Toyota Tundra, the opposite of showy, a truck that plows through mud, hauls hay, pulls trailers. A vehicle that understands the land, built for work, not display. It reflects a man who grew up in the fields and never lost respect for simple living. Then comes the Toyota Tacoma, smaller, agile, perfect for trails and escapes. It's the truck Malone uses to take his grandkids, letting them taste the wind of freedom, mud flying behind the tires. A truck of adventure, of family stories. And then, in the midst of all that power, the surprise, a Toyota Camry. Quiet, discreet, almost anonymous. It's the car he chooses when being present matters more than being seen. Humility on wheels, reminding us that greatness doesn't need a spotlight. Malone's garage isn't a luxury collection. It's a biography in motion. Every engine, every curve in the design tells who he is. Strong, hard-working, free, and above all, human. When Karl Malone hung up his jersey, he didn't leave discipline in the locker room. The money he earned over nearly 2 decades in the NBA didn't sit idle in accounts. It turned into something that created movement, jobs, franchises, businesses that fed families and sustained entire communities. In his hometown and beyond, restaurants, ice cream shops, and even fast food chains sprang up. Simple places where the impact wasn't in a flashy brand, but in the hot meal placed on someone's table. Alongside that, Malone invested in Toyota and Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram dealerships, as well as Jiffy Lube franchises. Not luxury showcases, but services communities actually needed in daily life. That choice says everything about who he is. Malone never chased runway glamour or investments meant to look sophisticated. He built growth on fundamentals, just as he did on the court, brick by brick, rebound by rebound. When the lights went out, those roots remained. Solid businesses employed people, doors opened. It was his way of still delivering, even outside the NBA. But not every delivery can be measured in numbers or financial statements. Some of the most important ones happened in silence, inside the home and in the heart. Because behind the number 32 on his jersey, there were also scars, mistakes, absences, headlines that sometimes stained his path. Karl Malone was not perfect, and he never pretended to be. The reconciliations with his past never became a public show. They happened far from cameras, during shared holidays, quiet birthdays, conversations on porches. No rehearsed speeches, just the truth of a man who knows family is daily work, as demanding as any training session. In 1990, he married Kay Kinsey, a former Miss Idaho, and with her he built not just a family, but a refuge of values. They had 4 children, raised between the ranch routine, fishing trips, and the simplicity of country mornings. For Karl, teaching them to work with their hands mattered more than any financial inheritance. He wanted his children to know what he had learned as a boy. That character is measured in daily discipline, not fleeting fame. Of course, like any human being, Malone had mistakes, scars from the past he had to face. Complicated stories of paternity came to light, and for years remained open wounds. But time, maturity, and the pursuit of reconciliation led him to build bridges, asking forgiveness and moving closer to those who shared his blood. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast, but it was real. His faith was always present, even in silence. A man of steady belief, he didn't speak much, but lived clear principles: honesty, work, humility. He didn't need cameras to prove devotion. His simple life was proof enough. At home, Malone wasn't the legend. He was the man who woke up early, whispered a short prayer, fed the horses, and checked the ranch fence. He didn't ask for applause. He asked for peace. He spoke of God softly, with the same simplicity of a boy who learned long ago to trust in what can't be seen. And maybe that's where Karl Malone's greatest greatness lies. He isn't remembered only for the 36,000+ points in the NBA or for his relentless elbows in the paint. He's remembered for his intimate legacy, that of a man who, even through failures, chose to grow, to reconcile, and to live with serenity. In the end, the legend blends with the man, and the story he leaves us is of someone who never forgot where he came from, and who found in family and faith a legacy greater than any trophy. Ultimately, Karl Malone's story isn't just about points, rebounds, or stats. Those numbers belong in books. What truly transcends generations is what doesn't fit in tables. The discipline that begins before sunrise, the resilience of turning pain into productive silence, and the conscious choice to plant roots deeper than any trophy. He was the mailman because he delivered on the court, but his greatest delivery might have been off it, staying faithful to the land, to his family, and to what truly matters when the arena lights go dark. Malone's journey reminds us that greatness isn't just about conquering. It's about knowing what to do after the conquest. It's about not losing yourself in the noise of success, but finding meaning in the quiet of simple mornings, in the dust of a dirt road, in the embrace of your children, in cattle grazing, in the crackle of a fireplace. And the question that remains is, what do you do with what you achieve? Do you keep chasing more, never satisfied, or do you learn to turn your victories into legacy, peace, and consistency? Karl Malone chose the second option, and that's why his story lives on, not just as an NBA statistic, but as proof that discipline and faith can transform a boy from Summerfield into an eternal symbol of resilience. If this journey made you reflect, smile, or feel moved, leave a like. For me, it's like a silent handshake from the other side of the screen. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, because every week we open the gates together to stories that cannot be forgotten. And now I ask you, which part of Karl Malone's life touched you the most? Write it down in the comments. I really want to hear your voice too. Until next time, because where there is discipline, courage, and faith, a legend will always be born.